Good afternoon. Here we have a quiet little motel, tucked away off the main highway, and as you see, perfectly harmless looking, when in fact, it has now become known as the scene of the crime. This motel also has, as an adjunct, an old house, which is, if I may say so, a little more sinister looking, less innocent than the motel itself. And in this house, the most dire, horrible events took place. I think we can go inside because the place is up for sale, although I don't know who's going to buy it now. In that window on the second floor, the single one in front, that's where the woman was first seen. Let's go inside. You see, even in daylight, this place still looks a bit sinister. Now, it was at the top of these stairs that the second murder took place. She came out of the door there and met the victim at the top. Of course, in a flash, there was the knife, and in no time, the victim tumbled and fell with a horrible crash. I think the back broke immediately and hit the floor. It's difficult to describe the way that the twisting of the. Well, I won't dwell upon it. Let's come upstairs. Of course, the victim, or should I say victims, hadn't any conception as to the type of people they would be confronted with in this house, especially the woman. She was the weirdest and the most. Well, let's go into her bedroom. Here's the woman's room, still beautifully preserved. And the imprint of her figure on the bed where she used to lay. I think some of her clothes are still in this wardrobe. This was the son's room, but we won't go in there because his favorite spot was the little parlor behind his office in the motel. Let's go down there. This young man, you had to feel sorry for him. After all, being dominated by an almost maniacal woman was enough to drive anyone to the extreme of, well, let's go in. Well, I suppose you'd call this his hideaway. His hobby, as you see, was taxidermy. Crow here, an owl there. Now, an important scene took place in this room. There was a private supper here. And, oh, by the way, this picture has great significance because, let's go along to cabin number 1. I want to show you something there. All tidied up. bathroom. Well, they've cleaned all this up now. Big difference. You should have seen the blood. The whole place was, well, it's too horrible to describe. Dreadful. And I'll tell you, there's a very important clue was found here. Down there. Well, the murderer, you see, crept in here very slowly. Of course, the shower was on. There was no sound. And
Okay, welcome to Movie Night Extravaganza. I am joined by my co-host, J. Andrew Stabby World. How's it going?
Pretty good. Haven't stabbed anybody today.
Oh, well, you're really behind. I've stabbed 3 people. And, of course, we are joined by Conan Neutron, the host of Protonic Reversal and the founder of the band, Conan Neutron and the Secret Friends. And I'm excited to announce that we're going to be premiering his music video, his latest music video, live at the end of the stream. So if you stick around, you know, that'll be fun.
That will be a thing that happens.
Yeah. So
I should be a Conan the Neutron or something. I should have made an appendation. I didn't think about it.
You should have gone with like Conan the foremost Conan or something. You know what I mean? Like now that Conan O'Brien's retired, you know, like
Alpha Conan. I'm the Alpha Conan bitch.
He still has his podcast, I think. Like kind of
yeah, which has friend in the title. Thanks to Pantsload, since my band's Conan Neutron and the Secret Friends. Now he's screwing up that Google result too.
Yeah, it's Conan needs a friend, and at least you have friends. You're beating Conan O'Brien because Conan's whole thing is that he needs a friend. He doesn't have any friends. Your whole thing is that you have friends. They don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, exactly. Which is better, really. I mean, I don't know. Who can say?
Forget about it.
I like that your band name makes it so that you're irreplaceable, but anyone else in the band really could you could just swap them out.
Well, it's a modus operandi, right? Like, I mean, unless you're a music nerd, you don't really know who the Famous Flames are, even though it says they're famous in the name. But you know who James Brown is, right? Also, there's a secondary meaning too, which is a secret friend is like when there's like high schoolers and stuff like that, where you have a social capital. We have like the kids that they're like the art kids, or like the punk kids or whatever. And like the jocks don't want to publicly be friends with them, but they know that they're cool and they're going to go on and do cool stuff. So they're friends with them in secret. So that's a secret friend. That's another definition.
Yeah. I thought that was where you're going with it, with the original meaning, I thought, but I don't know.
Yeah. Well, that's it. Yeah, and it's also just a big cumbersome band name that I never would have picked if I had thought it was going to be arguing with people in the marquee about whether it was correct or not. It was like I argued with a guy in, I think it was Chicago once. It was like, who put Conan Neutron and his Secret Friends. I was like, that's not correct, and he's like, oh, I'm sure it is, and I was like, I bet I'm pretty good authority that it is not.
And that person was Kenzo. That's why we can't have you and Kenzo on the same show.
That's why we're never on the same show at the same time. Which is weird, isn't it? I think it's almost like law of averages. You think we would have been at this point, but whatever.
Yeah. I might jump onto his stream after this stream because he's doing a Sopranos stream, but you know, I don't know. I was like, I don't know how long this is gonna go.
Conan's video's on, so I'll get on for that 2.5 minutes. We can clear out early.
Pop up. Hey, Gabagool. All right, gotta go. Gabagool over here. All right, that's it. That's my contribution.
And scene. Sopranos. Forrest Miller.
I really like that the ending of The Many Saints of Newark is that it turns into the Sopranos theme song, like at the very end of it. And I was like, at the end of it, I'm like, oh shit.
I like that too. And that's coming from someone that when I very first saw that show, I was like, this show's pretty good, but I don't know about that theme song. That's a little like, because remember, this is like 1999 or something. And it was like, everybody was trying to sound like Massive Attack or whatever. And I was like, oh, so they're trying to do a Massive Attack, but there's some like cheeseball bro, we'll go this morning. And I was like, oh, this is a dumbass song. And then I was like, 2 seasons later, I'm like, this is the best song I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah, no, it really grows on you. The other thing is that
like a fungus.
So whenever I go down to New York City, like on the bus or whatever, like on the trailways, it takes us through like part of New Jersey where like that like the part in between the city. And so I always like when we pull up to the throughway tolls, I'm always like, these are the ones I think from The Sopranos, and I get really hyped. But
yeah, right around the time that The Sopranos was on, I did a music video as an extra. I drove down to Jersey to be in the video, and I went through all those same spots that they did on the thing. I remember trying to cross one of those famous Jersey streets, with like 8 lanes to get to the supermarket across the street so everybody could have water. Still dressed up in like my goth costume, with my floor-length trench coat and black lipstick, and like literally there was a parent at the supermarket trying to protect their children from me. Like,
sure. I mean, what was the shooting at the time? There were so few we knew them by name at that time.
Yeah. No, this was when was this? 2001, I think. Who when was the shooting in 2001?
No, the Colorado. This is terrible.
No, that was 99.
That
was the same year I bought the trench coat. I remember I bought it right before The Matrix came out.
I'm glad we got those facts.
The Matrix premiere.
Columbine.
Yeah.
How the fuck could I do Columbine?
And this would have been after that because the band who I saw performing, I never saw until December of 99. So, just I got my timeline straight through pop culture. And I only know that because I have a bootleg of no, he released that as an album. Yeah, I have the album of the live show the first time I ever saw him. So there we go.
Well, but you didn't know the show yet. You didn't Sopranos, so you couldn't do like the Leonardo DiCaprio Once Upon a Time in Hollywood meme where he's like, "Oh, it's the thing," and he's got the drink. That's a great meme. That's a great meme for the internet. I recognize the thing. He's doing it.
No, I do like that. The where he's watching, he's like, yeah.
See, I did that later when I was watching Sopranos, last year for the first time.
We should get into talking about Psycho.
That's all time we got, folks.
Psycho, the famous Alfred Hitchcock movie that number one, of course, has the first flushing toilet scene, at least post Hays Code. I don't know if it's in general. I don't think anyone's ever been able to like even film a story and to been able to decide whether it's in general or if it's just like, I guess part of the Hays Code was that you couldn't have a flushing toilet. So it's definitely the first post Hays Code flushing toilet, but it's probably the first flushing toilet in any at least US movie.
Slapping a hysterical woman, totally okay, but no toilets.
Yeah. I don't know. I have a clip later on of a Janet Leigh where she's talking about how Janet Leigh is talking about how she's like, where would anyone have gone to the bathroom in any of these movies before Psycho came out? Like, since you never saw anybody in an actual bathroom. She's like, did they just never do it? I don't know.
They're all like Ken and Barbie dolls.
Yeah. All right. So I have a
tough crowd. Let me tell you.
I have a brief clip of Alfred Hitchcock explaining the point of Psycho, I guess. And I thought this is interesting because I think one of the most interesting things about Hitchcock, obviously, is the fact that he's the master of suspense, but that also extends to actually like marketing and advertising his own films. Like that obviously doesn't. And I think that like a big problem that I have with a lot of trailers and a lot of film, I guess, marketing now is that they always show you the best. They always show you like the best parts of it in the actual
Yeah,
trailer.
why watch the movie? You just saw it in the preview. Why bother?
So I really like the fact that, I mean, we both watched the one of the birds, like the trailer that he did for the birds, which was an amazing trailer, and this where he's just giving you a tour of the Bates Motel, and like in both cases he doesn't actually give away anything about the actual movie. I mean, you know, in this you just see a girl screaming and you see him obviously standing over the toilet, but you don't see like, and he plays with you on that fact. Like, I mean, there's the really amazing,
there's this
like,
character he has, like this bumbling kind of British character that he's doing too, like oh, that's the bathroom, you know. And there's like this almost kind of like macabre like way he's delivering the lines, but it's also humorous at the same time. It's really brilliant, the way he's pulling that off.
Well, and he leans into the whole kind of frame of who people thought he was too, of just being kind of like in the great presenter sort of way, right? Like the idea of like, oh, well, there was a murder that happened in this, and like it's sort of vague and like just like leaning into almost the host of a comedy night kind of routine sort of deal.
And it's similar in some ways to like
thought he was a creepy dude, which he's not a creepy dude, but
kind of the Vincent Price thing, you know, like where you pull off like the macabre presenter role rather than kind of, and I mean, it continues up to Hitchcock's films. Obviously, he's in every single one of them in at least one spot, like knowing that people are going to point it out and go, "Oh, that's where Hitchcock is in that one." And this touches on, I think, I mean, tomorrow to plug it, tomorrow we're doing the player for This Is Revolution, and I think in the player there's a lot of similar stuff to that. You know, like understanding that, you know, film nerds are going to be talking about this movie for a long time and giving them something to talk about. I think Hitchcock is one of the original people that kind of came up with that idea, like knowing full well that for generations people are going to talk about his films.
And I mean, even the character like lived on, because after he passed away in the 80s, there was an Alfred Hitchcock Presents TV show where they hired an actor to play Alfred Hitchcock. And it was the same type of character that you saw in this trailer, introducing every episode.
As he did on the original Alfred Hitchcock Presents.
Yeah, exactly. So you know, which is a lot of fun to actually see this you know, the development of this character of Alfred Hitchcock too, before it gets reproduced on the small screen as a character for consumption.
Yeah, and there's an understanding that as a director, you are a commodity. Like, you're part of the selling of the film, and I think a lot of the more auteur directors have tried to avoid that in some sense. Like, you know, like there's a lot of directors that you can't necessarily find intensive, and some that you can, like obviously like Billy Wilder. You can see him explaining like the process of filmmaking down to the letter. But there's a lot of other directors that felt like, oh, well, maybe my work should speak for itself. I'm not going to do these interviews. I'm not going to present myself a certain way. Hitchcock, there's a whole nother world to it. Like Hitchcock, he really embodies this character, and that's, I think, a large part of the marketing. So this is,
and it's just weird because like just to throw this out there before we watch this, but like you know, this is also like he's almost like a commodity the way like a cheaper director might become a commodity. Like you know, and no offense to Stephen King as the author, but like as a director and as a character actor, like you know, Stephen King kind of did the same thing by creating this character that he can use to sell his products. But like cheaper people,
boring Democrat guy. No, I'm kidding.
No, not
Stan Lee.
No, the one on cocaine from the 80s.
Yeah, I'm kidding. It's just Stephen King's Twitter is just has gotten really out of hand.
No, but like in the 80s when he was like on cocaine, going like, you know what we need? We need to have a truck with Green Goblin and Spider-Man on the front of it, and it will murder children. And
yeah, aka Maximum Overdrive and that whole. I don't really remember making that movie. I was so jacked up. I'm like, all right, but like, yeah, I mean, to a certain degree, like I said, Stan Lee in the Marvel movies, right? You look for the cameo. Oh, there he is. Oh, look, he's right at the bus. Oh, cool. It's like it's again, just I'm gonna make another reference to it. It's like the Leo from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood meme. There it is.
Yeah.
I see it. Yeah.
And I think that's what Tarantino was playing off of with, actors kind of watching their own movies on TV and being engrossed in it. But yeah, so this is and I want to talk about this. I have like stuff to say about this 1 minute Hitchcock explaining the plot clip.
Your new film is called Psycho. Can you tell me something about it?
Well, Psycho is my first attempt at a shocker. In other words, it has in its content certain episodes which do shock. In some sense, it could be called a horror film, but the horror only comes to you after you've seen it, when you get home in the dark.
But can you be more specific? Is it about a particular kind of...
Oh, well, the broad idea is a young man played by Anthony Perkins who runs a small motel, about a 12-unit, a rather cheesy affair, really. And in an old house behind the motel is his mother. And she, I'm afraid, is homicidal. He should put her away, but he loves her too much. So you can imagine what happens to the guests at the motel.
You once told me that actors were cattle to be shoved about. I wonder if you'd care to enlarge on that.
You mean you want to make them larger cattle than they are?
No.
Well, I don't. That's really a joke.
His cadence is so
larger
bad.
cattle.
Like that this way of speaking, the manner of like, if you actually like, it's so pronounced, but it's so perfect.
Yeah, he also kind of, he kind of stumbles through the words though. He has like yeah. No, so I think it's really fascinating, and I think we can dive into this a little bit more in the next clip that I have. But there's kind of, it's a red herring plot, right? Like you have the first 40 minutes, you're obviously following around like Marion Crane, like that's, and you think that she's kind of your protagonist or your antagonist, because since she steals the $40,000, and you get really engrossed in the story of, her affair and her $40,000, and her just kind of snapping and realizing like, I can just take this money. I'm tired of kind of working all the time. I'm tired of being taken advantage by this, guy going through a divorce. I'm tired of being taken advantage by my boss's clients. Like, I've just been handed this money. I'm going to take off with it. And then you obviously have that, terrifying police scene that Conan, I know that affected you. And you start to really feel for this character because she's not a bad person whatsoever. She's a very charming person. She makes a very bad decision, I think. If you're looking at it in terms of like what she can get away with, you know what I mean? Like, it's not like she's like some kind of career criminal. Like, she steals the money and then gets convinced by Norman Bates talking to him that she needs to give the money back, and and hope that she can like kind of just smooth this whole thing over. And then of course the plot switches. She gets murdered, and you realize it's never been a movie about her at all. It's a movie about Norman Bates, his psychosis, his relationship with his mother. You know what I mean? So I think it's really interesting that Hitchcock can only really talk about, at least in promoting the movie, the first half.
Yeah, I think like it's you sort of think it's like a heist movie. You're right? Like, it's a crime of passion heist movie, and you're like, oh man, that cop's gonna be trouble.
Yeah, it's like From Dusk Till Dawn, it's they're almost identical. Obviously,
I love From Dusk Till Dawn.
Quentin Tarantino plays Janet Leigh, and there you go. The rest, it's so obvious.
Quentin Tarantino kind of plays Norman.
The cop is the border guard.
No, Quentin Tarantino kind of plays Norman Bates. He's like raping and killing women the entire movie.
But like the thing is though, is like that it's part of the red herring. Years ago back in college, I got my friend fantasy writer, sorry, I got to get the right genre, fantasy writer GB McRae to watch From Dusk Till Dawn with knowing nothing about the plot. And the entire time she spent watching the movie going like, dude, I hate Tarantino films. I hate her. I'm like, trust me, you're going to like this movie. The first half of the movie, I hate this movie. And then the moment when Selma Hayek turns into a vampire and starts killing everybody.
What? Yeah.
This is the best movie ever. Like, there's always hats bouncing across the screen. just because it's just a gore fest after that. It's
Yeah.
but it's like this movie where like the first half of the movie's like these two bank robbers. It's a heist. It's this pretending to be one film and then completely switching genres in the middle of it.
From Dusk Till Dawn is technically a Robert Rodriguez film, though.
Yeah,
written by Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah, no, yeah, I know. But
and
Quentin Tarantino actually, he also wrote True Romance, which is another movie I want to do. But it's interesting that it's interesting that he's able to like sometimes get writing credits and sometimes get directing credits. I always found that interesting about him because I think the movies that he writes are a lot different a lot of times than the movies that he directs. That he has complete kind of autorial creative control over. But anyway, besides the point, I guess.
A few things. So first of all, I agree. It is like one of the first great all-time head fakes, I guess, within movies where you think it's one thing and then it's like, bam!
The red herring.
Yeah, red herring, exactly. And to the point that if you remember the marketing materials, they said in the marketing materials almost as like a selling point, like make sure you see it in the theater and don't tell anyone about it, like in a way that you just couldn't do now. Like I think the last movie they did that with was The Sixth Sense. Don't reveal the ending, and that's especially hard in Japan because I guess in Japan it's like a thing to post the spoilers as quick as you can, like it's a status thing or whatever. But I think that's amazing. We danced past the point immediately, so I guess we could talk about Quentin Tarantino. But the cop is so creepy. Like I think like he would be like if it was done in the modern day, he'd be played by like Clancy Brown or something.
Yeah,
and I think it's so fascinating because like even though I saw this movie, I've seen this many times, and I haven't seen it in a long time, but I don't remember being quite as wigged out by the cop as a younger man. And I was just like, wow, it's like because he kind of sets it up there like, wow, what's this cop is like menacing her kind of, and like I guess she deserves, like she did a crime, but like really does she? And like you kind of think again, it's like another red herring. It sets up so it's gonna be one thing, but I think from the grand tradition of like, oh, that guy is like what's not the maniac cop was a thing yet, obviously, but like is this guy like gonna go off the rails more than an average police officer would, even though like pretty white woman. So
yeah, and it seems like he is, and in her head it seems like he is. Like, you know what I mean? Like, because she's having the voices in her head that are like, she's kind of playing out what everyone's saying about her and this crime kind of behind the scenes. And some of it she thinks is kind of funny. Some of it she's kind of self-satisfied about. Some of it, obviously, she's terrified about. But, it's all kind of playing out in her head as she's driving. And they're really beautiful driving sequences, I think, throughout these parts. You know what I mean? Like, it really makes you feel like you're going along with her for the ride and you're following her, and it's like these long tracking shots and everything kind of fades into itself, and like it's really it's classic Hitchcock like beautiful filmmaking. But yeah, it really it is a red herring because you're kind of engrossed in this woman's story, like, and I think that the fact that the Hays Code is kind of falling apart is a really interesting part of the story of this movie too, because the sympathy that you feel with her is obviously something that you couldn't feel at the height of the Hays Code, when as much as they want to portray some, I guess, villains or some criminals as sympathetic, the person always has to get what's coming to them, and she doesn't get what's coming to her. She gets like you feel sympathetic, and then you watch her you watch her get slashed to death, like
yeah.
So it's
arguably
really
something nobody deserves.
Yeah, no, obviously, but like I think that part of the Hays Code, which has really always amazed me about it, in some ways, is that it's not just directing writers and directors in how to treat their characters or what they can and can't do. It's really formulating the story, for them. Like everyone has to get their due. Everyone has to, like, if someone commits a crime, they have to end up in jail or dead. You know what I mean? If society is shown in a bad way, you have to somehow redeem society. Like, it's really telling you how a story can be formulated and how a story can't be formulated. So the fact that this is able to happen just as the Hays Code falls apart, I think, and it still is enough that the writer of this movie, who's this young guy, kind of adapting a book that was in heavy therapy. There's a whole documentary about the making of this, and he was in therapy, and Hitchcock was fascinated by the fact that he's in therapy and was telling him to like write kind of his own thoughts about like therapeutic stuff, and like he's writing this all down. And then he said, like even the toilet flushing scene, like he said he wanted to, he said something like Hitchcock made him go to the censor and explain the scene and fight for it, like
Nice.
in a like but like in like a kind of fatherly, like artistic, like if you think this should be in the movie, I want you to go fight for it, which sounds like obviously Hitchcock being like, oh, it's not worth it. But like the way that the guy explained it in the documentary, it was like Hitchcock was like giving him the keys and saying like, listen, if you think this is important,
this is your therapy.
Well, and it's I was just gonna say I'm gonna hammer the point home a little bit, and I actually threw a thing to the some of the original marketing materials for it, which I probably should have given to you before the show. But like the no spoiler policy, that was a big deal, because think about it, at the time, people were used to like they come in during like the middle part of a movie and then like see it all the way through and then watch the beginning, and that's where the phrase "oh, this is where we came from," because that was a common practice. Joe Dante's talked about this a lot. Like that was a really common practice, and before any of our time, right? Although I gotta say, I grew up.
Actually, no, because I grew up in there was a dollar theater, second run theater in Atlanta, very famous for a while. They mentioned on an episode of Designing Women, but it was like right around the corner from where I used to live in Marietta, and they actually had that old policy where you can come in and you can just stay there all day. So I'd see like, friends of mine from pre-K and kindergarten and stuff like that come in every once in a while, and they'd come in the middle of the movie. And then I would also see like vagrants come in the middle of the movie, because, they could, it was a safe place for them to be. It was an interesting time.
So when you interrupted me, I was about to say that except for the fact that since I grew up in this place, Modesto, California, which is in the Central Valley, it's really hot all summer, that like the idea would be like you could just like that go to a movie theater and like just stay there, because it's got AC, it's got air conditioner, right? It's cool inside. So on that same point, like it's not uncommon now, but it's not as common as it was then. So like the whole thing with it was like, in the marketing materials, he said it's required that you watch Psycho from the very beginning. And so much so that he recorded. Now, keep in mind the era this came out. This is 1960. He recorded announcements to be played in the theater to like urge people not to like spoil it for anyone else. And like it was like that really just hadn't been done. But he had enough sway, so to speak, that he could pull that off. And I think that's super interesting, because now we think about like, I think nerd culture has been assimilated in such a way that it's kind of a given. Hey, don't post spoilers. That's like a dick move for most people. But like at the time, again, this is where we came in, right? That's like what we're talking about. And that was the rule, not the exception. Whereas the references you're making, Andrew, and that also, me and, the dead of summer and 120-degree heat in Modesto and trying to escape it. It's like that wasn't necessarily going to be the rule. That was going to be more the exception. This is the other way around.
Oh, I'm just trying to. Sorry, I'm just pulling up.
Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Well, and they even produce videos with testimonials from people, like saying that, like, hey, you really want to watch this from the beginning to the end, like that. And that was the thing. Again, like this is part of the marketing campaign, and people like, what? Why is this picture so important? Why do I have to watch it from the beginning? I don't know why they'd be talking like that, but whatever.
Hey,
why talk back then?
Hey, why do I have to be there, huh?
Why am I in sepia tone? I don't understand it.
I think it's so funny that asking people not to talk about Psycho made people talk about Psycho, because it was so unique and interesting. It's such a weird thing to be asked for.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And there's like kind of these documentaries about about the marketing of Psycho, and he kind of turned movie theaters almost into what it feels like an amusement park thing. Like, I mean, he has the recorded the messages, but he also has that we have all the time now, like the stand-ins. He had like stand-ins of himself, like, pressing the wristwatch. Like he had a lot of stuff like that, at like in the actual movie theaters as he was like
before
as
that
he
was commonplace. That wasn't really like a common practice. And now it's, of course, you know, hey, well, I mean, what's the whole thing? What's the whole thing about like they have to like the eyes have to look like they follow you around the room wherever you are, because like that's like, I don't know, somebody decided that's what they should do, even if it's like a romantic comedy. Yeah, exactly.
All right, so there it is. Sorry, my internet's being slow tonight, so it took me a minute to find and pull it up. But yeah, so they had the next showing of Psycho begins at even like, you know, making sure that you knew when the actual next showing of the movie was. They had the manager of this theater has been instructed at the risk of his life not to admit to the theater any persons after the picture starts. Any spurious attempts to enter by side doors, fire escapes, or ventilating shafts will be met by force. The entire objective of this extraordinary policy, of course, is to help you enjoy Psycho more.
Okay, boys, that's what we got to do now. We got to do Die Hard, except it's a dude trying to see Psycho. And it's the links.
I want to see Psycho, but I want to come in 10 minutes late. Yippee-ki-yay!
And like Hans Gruber is basically going to be Alfred Hitchcock. Like, you know, I need a Coke. It'll be great. It'll be great.
So I have this. It's a couple minutes, but I might cut it short. It's Alfred Hitchcock talking to Francois Truffaut. And I guess there was this book that was supposed to be released or was released. Truffaut interviews Hitchcock. Like, so it was a series of interviews that they recorded, and it's audio, it's not video, but it's Hitchcock talking about the concept of the red herring and what he was trying to do with that. And I found it really fascinating because it's two, you know, world famous directors talking back and forth about this.
Je crois que c'est un film, évidemment.
I believe that it's a picture
Où la situation
where the situation
est nettement plus importante que l'histoire.
is decidedly more important than the story.
Yes, sure.
Ouais. Et il est très beau visuellement.
And it's very beautiful visually.
Mais enfin, d'un autre côté,
On the other hand,
il y a aucun personnage sympathique auquel le
There's-
public peut s'identifier.
no likable character with which the public can identify.
It wasn't necessary.
Ce n'était pas nécessaire.
Perhaps they were sorry for the woman at the
Peut-être
time of her
Qu'ils avaient un
death.
peu pitié de la femme au moment de sa mort.
Ah oui, oui, bien sûr.
Surely.
Oui, mais ce n'était pas un suspense.
But it wasn't a suspense.
No, but well, you see, you had
Non, mais vous voyez, vous aviez
a deliberate turn from one story.
une tournée
another.
délibérée d'une histoire à une autre.
In fact, the first
fait,
part of the story
première
was a
partie de
red
l'histoire
herring.
Était réellement ce qu'on appelle un hareng rouge, c'est-à-dire un truc destiné à vous divertir votre attention.
Ah oui, oui.
Un divertissement
Deliberately, you see,
délibéré
in order to heighten the murder,
afin d'intensifier le
it
meurtre.
was
Il
necessary
était nécessaire
to make the
de faire
robbery and what
vol
happened to the
et
girl
de ce qui s'est passé à la fille,
purposely on the long side
délibérément du côté un peu long,
to get an audience absorbed with
afin
her,
d'absorber l'audience
with
avec
the
elle,
element of would she or would she not be caught,
avec l'élément de si elle serait ou si elle ne serait pas attrapée.
and that's why
Et c'est pourquoi
the construction
La
of it
construction
does contain many deliberations
contient plusieurs délibérations, des éléments délibérés,
to get the
obtenir
certain effects,
un
you
certain
see,
effet,
such as the murder.
tel
you
que le
see.
meurtre.
Even
Même
the
les
$40,000
$40 000,
had to be milked to the very end
j'ai travaillé jusqu'à la toute fin
because the public
parce que le public
are looking to
regarde
see
pour
what's
voir
going to happen
qu'est-ce
to
qui va
the
se
money.
passer avec l'argent.
You know,
Vous savez,
we have to digress a
il nous faut
moment
nous faire une
and
petite
bear in
diversion
mind that
pour nous rappeler
audiences
que le public
are always trying to jump ahead.
cherche toujours à anticiper,
They're always trying to say,
Toujours
I
à
know
se dire
what's
« Ah, moi je sais ce
coming
qui va se
next.
passer »,
So you deliberately play
alors
upon this
délibérément, il
fact.
faut jouer sur ça.
And the more detail that goes into the girl's
Et
journey,
plus il y a des détails dans le
the
trajet de
more
la
you
fille,
get them absorbed
plus vous les
in her
absorbez
problem,
dans son
in her
problème.
plight. That's why so much is made of the police,
C'est pour ça que nous faisons tellement état de la police.
the changing of the automobile.
Le changement de l'automobile.
And when the young man
Et quand le jeune homme
tells of his life in the motel
décrit sa vie dans le motel,
and they exchange views,
ils
you
échangent un point de vue.
see, you
On voit-
still play upon
On
the
joue encore
girl's
sur le fait
problem
que la
right
fille-
up to that moment
du problème de la
that
fille,
she's made up her
jusqu'à ce
mind to
moment.
go back
Elle s'est décidée
and
à
give the
retourner
money back.
et à retourner l'argent.
And it's
ça.
possible that the
Il est
audience are
possible que
saying,
l'audience se dit, ah bon,
this young man
ce jeune
is
homme,
influencing her to change her mind.
l'influence a changé d'avis.
Mais ce qui est curieux aussi, c'est que le
And
film
what's
joue
peculiar also is that
vraiment
the
sur le
picture
mauvais instinct du public.
really plays on the public's bad instincts.
C'est jusqu'au
That
meurtre
is to
de
say that
Janet
until the
Leigh,
murder of Janet Leigh,
on est pour elle.
you're for her.
On espère qu'elle se fera pas prendre,
You keep on hoping she won't be caught,
qu'elle mènera la belle vie avec son argent.
that she'll lead a good life with her stolen money.
Bon, elle se fait tuer
Then she
brusquement.
gets herself killed,
Et nous n'avons même pas eu peur pour elle, puisqu'il
And
n'y
we
a pas eu
haven't
de
even
suspense sur sa
had
mort.
time to be frightened for her because there was no suspense around her death.
Mais dès que Perkins est en
But as soon as
danger,
Perkins is in danger,
on est pour lui.
you're for him.
Vous voyez, c'est vraiment... on est pour lui jusqu'à ce
You're for him until
qu'on apprenne que sa mère est morte.
one learns that his mother has died.
Et lorsqu'on apprend que sa mère est morte,
And when you learn that his mother has died,
je crois, le public
I
devient
believe-
encore plus sadique.
the public becomes even more sadistic.
Il y a mystère,
There's a mystery,
et on sait qu'on ne résoudra ce mystère
and one knows that this mystery will only be resolved
qu'aux dépens de Perkins.
at the expense of Tony Perkins.
Alors à ce
That's
moment-là, on
right,
devient
that's
contre
right.
lui,
And so at that moment, you go against him,
Mhm.
mais uniquement pour satisfaire la curiosité.
but only to satisfy your curiosity.
C'est
Sure.
très impur.
Sure.
It's very impure.
Yeah, but here we're back into the peeping Tom theory.
Alors nous
again.
nous en revenons aux voyeurs.
Oui, c'est ça.
That's it.
Rear window, oui, oui.
Sure.
Yeah, so touching on the villain that you kind of root for, I think he kind of touches on that towards the end, where he's talking about you're kind of rooting for Norman Bates up until you find out the mother is dead, and Truffaut mentions that and then you're kind of still morbidly watching it, trying to find out what's going to happen to Norman Bates. Like you're fascinated by it, and I think that the concept of bringing out the worst instincts of an audience is a really fascinating idea that they talk about within that clip.
Yeah, and I think that like you're saying, you're rooting for him. Like even though this woman was murdered, when he's ditching the car, you're like, oh, it's not gonna sink. It's like you're like actually there's a moment you're like, wait a second, the hell with this guy? Like what? Really? Like
Yeah,
and in the
no,
same way that
that's a really amazing scene, and it goes on for so long. Like
it goes on for so long.
yeah,
I'm still
here's
watching that scene right now.
It's like
And the sound effects are just amazing. Like I just want to put that on a soundboard.
Right.
Just every time I take a drink, just press that, just have that gurgling sound.
But
Well,
I mean,
I
we
think-
started
No,
we started
go on.
talking about because of Many Saints of Newark. We were talking about The Sopranos. I mean, like without Norman Bates, there would never be a Tony Soprano. There would never be a Walter White. Like it was that was like the rise 1962, and that was the rise of like the not even like the anti-hero, but like the actual villain that you keep forgetting is like, oh yeah, you're villainous, aren't you? And in this
Yeah.
case, it's like a little more complicated, but I mean, it's
well, in this case, he's psychotic. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so there's a level of, I think, not sympathy really, because he literally murders his mother and her her boyfriend or husband or whatever. But like, there's a level of like, oh fuck, this guy, like towards the end at least, like,
Yeah.
You're like, this guy is like out of his fucking mind. Like it's more than just kind of, he's going around creeping on women and killing them. Like this guy is fucking out of his mind. But I think there's also something so terrifying about how charming and innocent and docile he really seems when you first meet him. Like he has that kind of, I mean, Anthony Perkins plays it off so well, but he has that like, oh shucks, oh geez energy.
Yeah, all American boy. Yeah, totally. Yeah. Like a grown up Morty.
Yeah. Oh man. Oh, I guess you got to go to room 1.
Well, I can't log up my mother.
And it's just crazy to think in 1960 that that kind of stuff didn't exist. Then you have you say Peeping Tom, I say Eyes Without a Face. Come out that same year. That in 1960 there was nothing like that. Nothing that did not exist.
Well, so the thing about the Hays Code is, I think that the thought behind it was, if you show villains in a sympathetic light, if you don't punish villains, if you don't teach audiences that villainous people, immoral people get what's coming to them, people are going to turn villainous. This medium film is so powerful that showing people that are villainous, showing society as corrupt, is just going to teach audiences that society is corrupt and you can do whatever the fuck you want. You don't have to listen to laws.
The devil will leap into your soul immediately. Yes. That's
This movie playing on your worst instincts, this movie kind of playing on your sympathies for these characters in some ways, at least at times, and your kind of morbid curiosity in some weird way. I mean, obviously no one's going to go out, watch this movie and go, I should kill my mother. And that's
a good idea.
Better live in my head. That's brilliant.
Why didn't I think of this before?
But it does kind of in some ways prove the point that like your worst instincts are triggered by film as a medium at times. You know what I mean? Like our most voyeuristic, our most morbid, our most sympathetic, diabolical instincts can be preyed upon by a master filmmaker, by a master of suspense.
So on that, just real quick, I'll just say that as someone that usually spends a good portion of my time touring, and as our mutual friend Jason Miles would also say, to this day, if you see some hotel like off the main drag kind of set back, you're like, nope. And this is the reason why. It's internalized that much into like the collective unconsciousness that way that like we'd be like, that's some Norman Bates shit right there. I ain't going anywhere near it.
Well, they've also made Psycho 2, Psycho 3, Bates Motel, remade. So
this had the cultural impact as the original. I mean, come on, let's not get the low.
No, but I'm saying they've really hammered the point home at this point.
Yeah, we get it. He's Psycho.
Was it 2 or 3 that's actually pretty good? The one where they actually do like the flashback with Anthony Perkins.
I think he was in Psycho 2.
Third, is it third one? It's I don't know.
I think it's the third. Yeah. Let's just not write that one off completely.
The mom in Bates Motel, I believe, is the same actress that plays Livia Soprano in Many Saints of Newark, if I remember correctly.
Oh, Vera Farmiga,
yeah.
Who weirdly enough seems like she's doing an Edie Falco impression that entire movie. Like she looks like her. She looks like her and sounds like her, and it's really. I mean, I don't know how much of the point.
She sounds exactly like fucking the character she's playing.
No, she sounds, but she also sounds kind of like Edie Falco. Like there's something about her, the way she looks and the way that she talks within that movie that reminds me of Edie Falco, which kind of hammers home the
complex.
Like the Oedipal shit that they're talking about within The Sopranos, where it's like, is she really the one? Because throughout that show, obviously they have like one of Tony's gumas. They're like, oh, she was a lot like your mother. But you start to wonder, like, was it also that like Tony Soprano's mom, as someone that was younger, like looked and sounded like Edie Falco? You know what I mean? Like, is that like why Tony ended up with Carmela? And I don't know how much of that was like planned, but I found that fascinating. Either way.
No, I thought that was really interesting too. And again, I know we're not here to talk about that, but I found her portrayal, like I know that some of the people playing younger versions of the other characters are catching praise and some of them are catching grief. But I thought she did a great job, because the thing is, you got to understand, like, this character is a toxic personality, right? But but like you get to see like a little bit of like, their interaction, her and the Punisher interacting, and they're obviously, it's not the happiest marriage, but that there's some moments, but like oh well, maybe she wasn't just completely monstrous. But
you see the Punisher. I see Shane from Walking Dead.
Oh, that's Punisher. Okay.
Yeah.
I was just
John
like,
Barenthal.
wait,
That's like
Dolph
Yeah.
Lundgren, right? Dolph Lundgren. Tell me Dolph Lundgren's in the movie.
No,
No,
like,
no. He's the
I
only
still- I
good
can't-
Punisher, Barenthal.
I can't see that guy in any movie without thinking of Shane. And the other, the guy that played Junior was, I think Ephraim or whatever in The Strain.
And was in House of Cards too.
Yeah, no, he's been in a bunch of stuff, but
Yeah.
I can't not see him in The Strain. So it was like a weird, but then finally he like convinced me that he was fucking Junior. Although he played Junior a little bit like he had Asperger's, more than you know what I mean, like. It's like his social skills throughout that movie. Every time he talked, like everyone was kind of like, I don't think you quite know what's going on, but all right, yeah. Junior, like, which wasn't the feeling that I got from Junior in the show. I kind of got the feeling that he was like, his social skills were off because he was a fucking sociopath that like, was completely out of touch with the time that he was in. Not that he was like in the 60s, also kind of out of touch with the time he was in. Like when was his time then?
Well, so I did like the idea though that he had always had like a gripe in the show about basically not being the one people wanted to rally behind, the one that people wanted to be the boss, and the one that like had the panache and the swagger, and seeing that like, oh, that was kind of always the case. Like, he was always in this, always the bridesmaid, never quite getting the respect he felt he deserved. So and so.
Well, you saw that in the flashbacks, I think.
Yeah.
When he was like second fiddle to Johnny in the flat, one of the most amazing scenes is that they refilmed the scene where young Tony sees the guy get capped at the fair. I thought that's pretty amazing that they remade that. Anyway, besides the point,
the only reason it took us on that road is because at Bates Motel, like it's the same Mother Bates. That's
and Tony Soprano kept his mother's dresses and dressed up as her whenever he whacked people in season 4 and 5 of The Sopranos.
Redacted scenes. Though. He didn't.
Yeah.
Listen, a mother is a boy's best friend. Did you ever notice James Gandolfini's lisp gets worse throughout the 6 seasons of The Sopranos? Like when you hear him the first season, he sounds pretty normal. By the end of it, his lisp is so pronounced whenever he says anything. It's pretty funny. There's been like whole Reddit threads written about this. I'm not just like
I believe you. Yeah. I not noticed that, but it's been a while since I've seen some of those later seasons, even though they seem to have it on the television constantly now because of the movie.
Yeah. All right. Well, going back,
like I forgot Steve Buscemi was on that television show. I was like, oh yeah, he plays this whole character. He's got this whole arc. I totally forgot about that.
Directed a bunch of them too. He directed some of the best episodes that they did. Yeah. No, so I really like the concept though in Psycho, like the red herring, and I really like that a big portion of the movie it doesn't actually really figure in. Besides the fact, obviously, that like the sister and the the boyfriend, I guess, the Guma, come and try to find out what happened to her and solve this crime and find her, and it is interesting that like they're not trying to press charges, like. You know what I mean? Because she's like a pretty girl, and like they don't want to see something bad happen to her. Like, and the guy is really fucking creepy. So like, whatever happened there.
So who's buried in mother? I almost said soprano, motherfucker. Bates' grave. I fucked that up really bad. Sorry, my bad. That old scene. Grave. So who's buried in her grave? That whole kind of like, oh yeah, well nobody cares. Moving on. Whatever.
There's so many good lines throughout this movie too. I like because
there's two there's like a bunch of red herrings, and the red herring of like the mother being alive is such a good one too. Like like, oh wait, she's not actually dead. Okay.
And they beat you to death with it too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Like
they throw it out a lot that like, oh, she's this oppressive figure. He's the one that's like, he's the victim here. Like he's in this oppressive parental relationship that's like completely toxic, and he can't leave. He's stuck. He has to take care of her. And it's like, oh yeah, none of that's true.
Yeah. And
by the way, none of that was true. I was lying.
No, but even 20 minutes, I think, before the film ends, you're still asking the question: is the mother really alive? Like, like up until the sister like grabs the chair, there's still a part of you like even like knowing I mean, this movie's been played so many times, this movie's been talked about so much that I mean, I can't imagine that anybody doesn't know how this movie ends, considering there's been a TV show, multiple films, you know what I mean, like the franchise.
Yeah, I mean, come on.
Yeah, but like just
statute of limitations, folks. Come on.
Thinking about it,
statute of limitations.
But thinking about it, like in terms of if this was a movie I was watching for the first time, and like you still don't know, because there's a part of you that thinks that he's cleaning up his mother's mess. The mother is this evil figure that's murdered this girl. He's like, so there's still some level of sympathy where he runs in after he murders her and looks around as if, because he doesn't, I mean, whether or not he knows that he's murdered her, the psychiatrist at the end claims he doesn't. Like he runs in and he's like, oh no, what happened? And starts cleaning everything up. And he obviously, puts the car in the swamp, and there's that long sequence. At that point, you still think that he's cleaning up the mother's mess. The mother is this evil person that's like stabbed her to death. And then even, yeah. And then it gets harder and harder to have sympathy with him because, obviously he's hiding the mother in the cellar. And there's my favorite line in the whole movie is, you want me to hide in that fruit cellar? You think I'm fruity, don't you? Or, but even at that point, because you don't see that she's obviously a skeleton, you don't put the taxidermy idea, you know what I mean? Like, so you think that maybe he killed someone else and put her in the mother's grave, or it could be that, the mother didn't actually die. So like when the cop asks like, oh, then whose body is in that grave? Like, you don't know the answer to that question. And they leave you guessing that until literally like, 10 minutes before the movie ends, the sister runs up, grabs the chair, and you find out, oh no, the mother's been dead the entire time. That's an amazing point to keep hidden for the entire movie. Like an amazing way, or an amazing, thing to keep the audience guessing for that amount of time, I think.
No wonder there was that big campaign to like not do the spoilers, right? I mean, like you're trying to hold on to that as like oh my God, like you're not going to be like, oh, check it out. So mom's dead and he's actually the psycho. Psycho's him. Okay, cool.
Well, you see, the mother's dead and he's actually the psycho the entire time.
Psycho.
So I don't know. I find it fascinating. I mean, Alfred Hitchcock obviously proves again and again that he has the master of suspense, title well earned. But I think this movie really cinches it up more than anything else he makes. Because the thing that the thing that you feel suspense over obviously isn't her death. It happened so fast.
Yeah.
And
it's shocking. It's shocking how fast it just happens and it's over. And you're like, oh my God, what happened?
Yeah.
And to this, like, you can know what's coming. You can have seen this movie before and still be like, oh crap. Like, cause like, that's like, where are you the most vulnerable, right? Like you're like in the shower, you're naked, you're only like half paying attention. Like, man.
Janet Leigh said that she never took a shower again after filming that movie. Like, awesome. I have a clip where she talks about it. She literally says she never went alone in a shower again, which
Well,
but
there's 2 words in that sentence.
So this is
don't get me with a good time, let me tell you. Right.
This is 2 different shower scene clips, and then we can talk about the second half of the movie. I'd like to talk about in detail, but this is a breakdown of the shower scene.
What can you give away any secrets of your theory of scaring people? The psycho shower scene made many women afraid to take a shower in a house where they were alone for years, some to this day.
Well, I had a letter from a man who said that my daughter, after she saw the French film Diabolique, would never take a tub anymore because they had a scene with a man coming out of a tub and taking his eyes out, some horror scene.
Yeah.
He said, and after seeing that, she'd never take a tub. Now, having seen Psycho, she won't take a shower. Mm-hmm. As a result, she's very unpleasant to be around. So I replied, I said, dear sir, send her to the dry cleaners.
I was wondering what your theory is of how to make a scene as scary as you did that. Without getting too technical, but a lot of film students are watching because there are a lot of them around the country and colleges. Yeah, the average movie I think I've read is made up of about 600 separate shots. Would that be true?
Well, the shower scene in Psycho, the knife never touched the body at all. Mm-hmm. It was just this fast cutting from one thing to another, the knife coming at the camera and so forth. Actually, the property people at the studio made me a lovely torso with pink rubber, and it was all tubed inside with blood. Mm-hmm. So that if you took a knife and stabbed this rubber torso, blood would spurt out immediately. Mm-hmm. But I never used it. It was all unnecessary because the cutting of the knife, the girl's face and the feet and everything was so rapid that there were 78 separate pieces of film in 45 seconds.
So the fear came from the putting together
yes,
later,
sure.
not anything.
Well, anything that you can involve an audience so close is much better than seeing it from a distance. I think there's nothing more boring than a barroom brawl in a Western. What do? Break up a lot of furniture and a lot of bottles on the shelf.
Right.
But if you took the audience right in and got an impression of a face, a hand, an arm, and feet and everything, you'd involve the audience much closer with it.
This is hard for me to watch.
Is it hard for you to watch?
But see,
look at the smile.
Yeah. You see, this is having made the right choice.
Yeah.
And she knows she's made the right choice.
Yeah.
And it's washing not just her face and her hair, it's washing her soul.
Her soul.
Yeah. And so knowing this, the audience is almost at peace at this point.
Yeah.
You know, maybe she's going to go with one or the other. That we don't know yet.
Yeah.
But now
I'm sorry to ask you to watch this because I know it's difficult, but if we could talk about some of the techniques, and it would be very interesting. For example, apparently Mr. Hitchcock shot slow motion sequences and everything like that to add to the. So we're watching it slow motion here.
Yeah, see, people swear that they saw the knife go in the body and they saw blood spurt out.
Yeah.
They never ever did.
No.
What Mr. Hitchcock did was when the knife went back with the music was the thrust of the knife.
Yeah.
And as the music and the knife went forward, you saw a quick shot of a tongue, or a here, or a leg or something. And you saw the knife go in there, but you never did because the next thing you saw was the knife coming back out. So you swore you saw the knife go in and it was being pulled back out.
What's striking when you look at this in slow motion is you can see a kind of terror on your face.
It wasn't difficult.
Look at that. It's.
Yeah, you have that apparition. I mean, just the whole idea of it, because there was someone there who was Mother. I mean, not Tony, but and there was a knife, not a real one, but still. I mean, just think of having something come at you like that.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take much imagination to lose yourself in the fear and then in the frenzy and in the complete horror.
And it's the way it's shot that some of it is out of focus. Look at that. That's clearly an out of focus shot. And then the knife comes into the foreground and then it goes into focus and it cuts through water.
Yeah. And you cut through the water, but never the skin.
Never the skin.
Never.
No. Look at that.
It's agony. I mean, you see it because imagine what it would be. That's why I don't take a shower. And it's true. I cannot.
Is that really true?
That really, I swear to you, is true. And it wasn't until I saw it, not the shooting of it, because that's done in pieces. It's too difficult. But when I saw it and realized how completely defenseless we are in a shower. Think about it. The water's going. You can't hear. You can't see because the curtain or door or whatever is there. And you're naked, you're defenseless. So, why would I put myself in that position ever again?
I mean, Yeah.
I like the juxtaposition of the two clips. Like where Hitchcock's like, oh, someone would never take a shower again, and then she's like, me, I would never take a shower again.
I am the person you were speaking of. Yes.
No, but I mean, it is fucking terrifying, and it's a scene that I think that sticks with you forever. Like even now, I think it's a scene that sticks with you forever. And it happens so fast, and I think that a big part of it is the fact there's no suspense behind it. Emotionally speaking, there's no suspense behind it. You're not expecting her to die because you've gotten too invested in her story for her to die, at least at this point. Like, so the fact that she's like agreed to give the money away, and there's that whole scene where Norman Bates says, you know what I think, we're all in our private traps, clamped in them, and none of us can ever get out, and we scratch and claw, but only at the air and only at each other. And she realizes that she's created her own private trap by taking the money. And it's this like realization, like, oh fuck, like I really fucked myself in this situation. And she's talking to this guy he's definitely awkward, but like in an aw shucks like kind of way, and doesn't seem threatening, although it's kind of creepy that he has a whole taxidermy hobby that he's kind of talking about, but it's just birds.
Was that more acceptable back then? Because it seemed like she's like, oh, huh, but like not like about it. Like I don't know.
Yeah,
was that bigger back then?
I mean, did y'all not grow up with people with taxidermied heads in their walls?
Oh no, I've met plenty of people with. I also live near the Mohonk Mountain House, which they have.
Yeah, I think if you're
because I moved from Marietta, which is a lot more urban, to Powder Springs, which had a Klan rally when I was a kid. That wasn't even my first, that became my first Klan rally. That wasn't my last Klan rally I ever saw. But
that makes it sound like you attended. And
no, it was like they were like outside the Dairy Queen. And my mom's like, don't look at them. Don't look at them. And I'm like, what? If I look at them, my face will melt. I thought it was gonna be like Indiana Jones. Like, so we drove past. It was like, okay, you can look at them now. And I'm like, look at them.
That started my Klan phase.
What are these clowns? What even are they? Why couldn't we look at them? Shouldn't we laugh at them? Like these guys are ridiculous. You're acting like we should be scared of these idiots, dressed in sheets. What's wrong with you, Mom? Why are you in my head? Get out of my head.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say, why are you putting on a sheet? Stop putting on a sheet.
Her second husband certainly is truly like that, but that's a whole other story.
And the show just got canceled.
And good night, everybody.
And that's our show, everybody.
I can't say anything. My grandma was left Germany after World War II and was definitely her family was definitely on the wrong side of World War II. So I guess I can't really say anything too damning back. But I don't know. We have the families we have.
Can I speak to something that is not any of those things and go back to the point that Janet Lee was talking about like how everyone just swears up and down that like they saw the blood coming out and the knife going in. What makes this so great is the suspense is so tactile that people have the like, no, that definitely like she got stabbed like a million times and you saw it and it makes you think that because your mind fills in the blanks in a way that like I have massive disdain for certain modern horror things. Like I call it the Saw school of horror, where it's just like, hey, here's all the gore and it's presented to you in like a new metal sort of fashion, in my opinion. This opinions of Conan Neutron, or this opinions of Conan Neutron, not the opinions of movie Night Extravaganza. But one of the reasons I love most of my favorite horror movies tend to be like either on the cusp or these kind of movies that are transitional, like that they embody several different genres at once, are because I think that's where the coolest stuff happens. And again, there's stuff we take for granted now that people just flat out didn't see before, like I guess 1960, 1959, never saw it. 1960, they saw it a bunch, like whoosh, right there.
Yeah.
But like we take it for granted because it's part of culture now. Like even the idea that like, there's this person that murders you, right? Not like, oh, there was a series of events that led.
I take that for granted every day. Yeah. I assume it's going to be a person that murders me.
I mean, that's when we started thinking about killers. Like, I mean, and even like the fact that like if you look at the studies done for like the stuff that led to Mindhunter, right? Like serial killers, like the psychology of, and that's more like a 70s thing. But like this was kind of at the vanguard of predicting, like, as like, oh, like, and granted, my least favorite part of it is a psychiatrist being like, well, everybody, let me tell you exactly what's going on with Norman Bates. I mean, that part kind of sucks, I think. But like,
kindly, Sergeant Krupke, well, you gotta understand.
Yeah, you're the one that put it as a different West Side Story, yeah, right. Which I never caught that. So,
yeah.
But I think
no, he's not Officer Krupke though. He's his boss or whatever. But yeah, no, it's the asshole cop that that guy was the same one.
But the thing is, things that we think of as tropes around the genre and around the suspense genre even were created with this movie. And I think that, you know, is it the first slasher film? Okay, well, maybe it is, maybe it isn't, maybe it doesn't matter because it's so far in the popular consciousness that it's just a part of like human society to a certain degree. Like it lives.
I mean,
in
if
that
it's not the first slasher film, it's a proto slasher film, right?
Yeah,
like, that's
like
definitely
Wooly
a conversation
Bully
I wanted to
the Ramones, you know.
Exactly. Is it Rocket 88 or is it, you know, the Beatles or like whatever?
Yeah, and that's a conversation I definitely wanted to end with before we watch your music video, like later on. Like I wanted to definitely end with the conversation about, is this a slasher film? Is it kind of a proto slasher film? I mean, I think that I would say it is a slasher film, and I would say that the fact that there's multiple victims, you know what I mean? Like it's a crazy guy that's kind of, there's multiple of them. It's a franchise. Like Hitchcock didn't intend it that way, but that's what it turned into. Who knows what anybody else intended with, you know what I mean? Like these films. I think that John Carpenter, who, you know, some people say that Halloween was the first slasher film, which is bullshit. But like, you know, because there's other, I mean, there's also
the first commercially successful slasher film because they were like exploitation films since Psycho. But
I mean, this was commercially. This was also commercially successful. You know what I mean? Like,
so it was Wooly Bully.
Yeah, I do think that watching I do think that watching Black Christmas last night was very interesting because if that's considered one of the first slasher films, then that means like a lot of the tropes that we see in slasher films, like, you know, sorority girls, obviously, but like also just like I don't know, I wrote down a bunch of them last night that I put on Letterboxd, but like there's just a bunch of different tropes, like, you know, the calls coming from in the house was like a big one watching that, like, you know what I mean, like just these, like the cop that doesn't really know what the fuck they're doing, and which Psycho has too, but I mean, I think that in Black Christmas it's like so apparent that the cop is just an idiot. Like all of these different tropes that, you know, add up to the slasher genre are in that movie specifically. And it's funny to see that they were in it from the beginning because I don't think that the formulas changed that much.
Same year, Eyes Without a Face, though, like that's the first body horror movie, right? I mean, like it's and that's again things that we take, you know, for granted right now. Like as freaky as Cronenberg is, like you wouldn't have any Cronenberg if you didn't have Eyes Without a Face.
Or Billy Idol.
It's also true.
But what you're saying about the tactileness of it, I agree. I also think that as Janet Leigh says, like the like, you know, the fact that the music itself, and as someone that is a musician, I think you can probably attest to this as well. The fact that the music sounds like slashing, it's slash, you know what I mean? Like,
isn't that great?
Yeah. And the fact that it almost sounds metallic, like, you know what I mean? Like the way that it falls in your ears is as if you're being slashed because it happens in such a quick succession in that moment that like, you know, you watch the slashing happen and it feels like you are seeing somebody get slashed, whether or not you actually see the knife pierce the skin. It pierces your ears, which is a fascinating thing because it shows that our senses are all connected in that way, and it shows that one sense can be fully engaged, the other sense doesn't have to be engaged, and our brain fills in the gap between the two.
Absolutely.
Well, I mean, this is right before the era too of like smell-o-vision. If you remember, like there were actually movies where they would try to like pump smells or smoke into the theater to heighten the experience of the film.
I can't remember if it was Wild Thornberrys or Rugrats, but they tried to bring that back for one of the Nickelodeon. I remember going to the theater and getting handed a card, and
was it Matinee? Was it the movie Matinee that I'm thinking of that had the whatever? Nobody cares.
I don't really remember this part.
John Goodman. That's a good one.
But, yeah, but yeah, no. I mean, like they were in the '60s trying to figure out new ways to bring
engage
people in, and I don't know if the violins, which I believe I forget exactly what they're called, something like the closest instrument to replicate the human voice. So something to that effect.
Yeah, and Bernard Herrmann, he did like I think 4 or 5 different Hitchcock movies. Like he did Vertigo too.
Yeah, and I'm dropping all these music references, and you're not. So
well, you're not letting me. You keep changing topics. But I think something that's really and again, since I've gone on record on this show and others about my critiques of some modern composers, you don't hear the stabbing.
Friend of show.
You don't hear the stabbing bit until you get to that scene. You do hear the rest. You hear the other parts of like the buildup throughout the whole thing, and it's a really strong score. But that piece of movie, that piece of film, along with that piece of music, like that's up there with like Tubular Bells and The Exorcist, where you can't think of that movie without having that like ring, 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 like running through your head.
Yeah.
And that's
that's not even, and that's not even, as you said, like that's not even played throughout the vast majority of it. It's just that one scene that you really, I mean, you also, man. Yeah, or at least that's the first time it really comes up. I think that it also does remind me of Vertigo. When the original as she's fleeing, like that part of it definitely reminds me of Vertigo. And like the feeling you get whenever whenever you see the heights throughout that movie, like a similar kind of thing happens. So I didn't know that there was the same composer that did both, but that makes perfect sense.
Bernard Herrmann, he did also Marnie and North by Northwest and Trouble with Harry too. So they did a whole run.
Marnie's one of the few Hitchcock movies I haven't seen, and it's interesting because it was done back to back with The Birds. Yeah, and Tippi Hedren in both of them, and then after filming Marnie, which is obviously a psychologically horrifying movie, I think Alfred Hitchcock allegedly sexually assaulted Tippi Hedren. Really? Because he was like obsessed with her and was like, which is really dark, but I mean really, really dark, but there's like this, he like saw her canceled. Specifically as a
it's never too late.
I've been canceled and now I'm doing right-wing comedy clubs.
That's the bit, like Alfred Hitchcock going in all the right-wing talk shows.
So this fall, though, wrote me a letter, and I said, "Send her to me. I like stinky girls."
Cancel culture's out of control. Sorry.
Look, Psycho might have been scary, but the real scary thing is cancel culture. Every day I wake up in suspense. Will I be canceled or won't I? It's a horrifying life.
Credit where credit's due. Hitchcock was on the all cops are bastards train before most of us were born. So that's something.
Well, all right. So something that I learned from the Making of Psycho documentary, which they interviewed his daughter. They interviewed the guy who wrote the script, who was very young when he wrote the script. So there's a lot of people that at least at this time, I think it was in the 90s, that were still alive, that were, willing to talk to them about the making of, as was, Janet Leigh lived for a very long time. So, one thing is that Hitchcock had a lifelong fear of cops, which is something that he jokes about in a lot of those Dick Cavett. Because at this point, we've done a Birds episode, and we've done a Psycho episode. Yeah. So I've watched it, and also I've been watching Hitchcock movies since I was a kid. That was really the first horror director I ever liked. Suspense, the first director in that kind of genre. I remember being a kid, and I remember my mom explaining to me the plot of Psycho, and going, "Wait, how the fuck can I watch this movie?" I think that I guess something that happened to him was that his parents had threatened him and said, like, you're going to be arrested. They had a cop like pretend to arrest him and take him to a holding cell.
Jeez.
And he insisted for the rest of his life that he had been thrown, like his parents had gotten him thrown in jail. And his daughter in this documentary was like, I don't think he was thrown in jail. I think he was thrown into like a holding cell and kept there for a few hours. But it left him with like a crippling fear of cops. Yeah.
Sure.
So that scene is him kind of putting one of his own fears, like putting his heart on his sleeve and putting one of his own fears into the film. Yeah. So I think that that's a fascinating, because you can watch that and you can say like, I think that that's a relevant fear in the sense of like, I think a lot of people have it. Like I feel the same way when I see a police car, like knowing I'm not doing anything wrong. I feel the same way as like when I see a wasp a lot of times.
Yeah.
Like that same like
the weird thing is they're both white Anglo-Saxon Protestants.
All right, respect. That was solid, man. That was solid.
No, that was great. White Anglo-Saxon Protestants.
And we did about 5 minutes of setup for you, so it hit even harder. So if I can, so speaking to that point, of course, as a, white Anglo-Saxon atheist,
What's up?
I'm supposed to feel some kind of comfort at seeing cops. I never have. I mean, and that's part of coming up punk. I think you just learn to immediately distrust the cops. They're not looking after your best interest. They're looking after the best interests of certain people that do not share your values, even if they share your skin color.
Yeah, but you also have, I think, a class background that isn't necessary. Like the suburban class background, I don't think is something that, and it's not something that I share either. Like I've been raised with a healthy fear of cops in general. Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, so I think that the class background thing is a big part of it too that doesn't get talked about enough. That like if you're not like rich or like at least upper middle class, like that fear of cops is still there. Like they're there to defend property for the most part. I mean, not to get too Marxist on on my movie podcast, but
and suburbanites can still sing along to "Fuck the Police," sure, but like it's not going to hit the same way that like when you're like, no, this is an actual impediment towards not just my life but perhaps living.
Yeah.
No. Like that's
because it's like the police in the cities, not the ones in the suburbs. But
yeah, exactly.
I can attest to you. Although I did have that really weird experience with the ultra woke cop in the 90s. I missed a turn.
Is that the PC police?
Ultra woke cop. This cop sees a guy driving around in a minivan with long hair. I miss a turn. I do a U-turn in a used car lot parking, like a 3-point turn thing. But there's no traffic. It was fine. The cop pulls me over to find out what's going on, right? He sees me, basically pulls me out of the car, gives me like a drunk test, everything like that, goes up to the car and realizes that the entire car is filled with a bunch of my friends who are New Yorkers. And he's like all cool with them after treating me like crap because I'm a white dude. Like this dead white cop. And it was just like the weirdest experience I've ever had. And I'm just like, I can't explain what just, and they're like, oh, he seemed really mean to you, but he was cool with us. And I was like,
I thought you were going to say that you did that turn and then he said, why don't you try that turn again, but make it intersectional this time?
No, it was just the weirdest experience that he was just like so cool with they had drugs on them. I know this for a fact.
Killdozer has a song called "The Pig Was Cool," so there you go. That can be.
That's like that night.
I also like the idea of Alfred Hitchcock as a guy getting canceled, but like the thing he's afraid of is the PC police. So they pull him up and he's like, "Here comes the woke police again."
Just in that dry, that dry cadence. Yeah,
I've been charged with cancel culture. No, but all right. So one thing that I definitely want to talk about in this film is that as the matter he sprinkles in So there's lines like "we all go a little mad sometimes," right? Which are obviously foreshadowing the fact that Norman Bates is out of his mind. But throughout the movie, there's also he sprinkles in red herring foreshadowing, right? Like the boy's best friend is his mother thing that sounds ominous.
Right.
Like he sprinkles in a whole bunch of different, like, we're all in our private traps. You think that means that he's trapped because of his mother at the Bates Motel, which obviously in the end he's trapped by what he's done, murdering his mother and murdering her new husband. You know what I mean? So there's all these little things that he sprinkles in as like clues, that like rewatching it, I think, you start to realize that like the red herring part of it goes really fucking deep. Like it's like writing a novel. Like the way that this is written is almost like a novel, and you're reading the novel, and throughout the novel there's all these clues sprinkled that don't lead up to the actual end of it, which is something that I found fascinating.
Well, yeah, and it just again hammers home the point that he wanted the thing viewed as a whole, because I think the setup, including all the red herrings and the entire ride you take to get there, makes the reveal all the more jarring. All of the reveals.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something where if you were to kind of take it on face value, and it's something you could like drop into, and as we would say now, like I always tag it on Letterboxd as the accidental cable watch. Like I'm flipping channels, I'm like, oh shit, this is on. I'll watch this.
Well, you're coming in the middle of it, huh?
Yeah, you're coming in the middle, or like quarter of the way through, or something. Yeah, and I do that more often than I'd like to admit, frankly. But like in that same way, again, this is where I came in, right? Like building the sort of like, oh, it's a different experience if you just watch it from beginning to end, and we almost take that for granted now, because I think if you really are committing to a movie and like watching a film, I think people kind of just have a resting state of treating it more seriously than maybe they did. We're like, I'm just gonna go and see a flick. Like, why is it that voice? Why don't you go into that voice? But anyway, whatever.
Hey,
it doesn't matter.
I'm gonna go over there and see a flick. Movie theater, eh?
Yeah, we're taking my best girl. We're gonna see a film now, huh? But seriously, I think that it is treated overall differently. Like it's treated more like, well, of course I'm gonna watch the whole thing. I mean, even if it's something like, I know I'm using a poor example because I wouldn't watch it, but the Snyder Cut or something, like, oh, I'm gonna invest myself for all 55 hours of this or whatever it is.
I'm still watching the Snyder Cut right now too.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like the star sinking Snyder and you guys. That's what's going on right now.
I'm still watching all 17 hours of Dune. All right, let's do it. Excellent callback to earlier, but the
cocaine cut.
Yeah, and I think that's but I think that's it builds those stakes. It builds stakes the entire time, and in a way that, like, I'm not sure. So when I first watched Psycho, I just watched it as like, I'm just a kid that likes movies, and then I could watch it as like I'm studying to be a cinematographer, and I was looking more from the mechanics of it, and then I again watched it as like, oh, I'm just a dude that likes movies again. But like now, since I'm somehow more interested in like the storytelling part of it, I really appreciate the fact that, like, God, it's not just like building stakes, it's building stakes. Like there's a mountain over here full of stakes that doesn't go anywhere. That specifically
Trump stakes.
God damn it.
There's so many stakes. Come on down.
The best stakes, they're all piled up in a gigantic pile. You'll love it. You've never seen a bigger pile of stakes.
Once in a while you get a red herring in there, but it's all right. It's all right.
It adds to the flavor. They say the flavor. Just to take away from the actual pile of stakes that has grown to this mountain that is like the Leonardo. Oh my God! It's holy! I had no idea, but it was there the whole time. Kind of moment.
Yeah.
The Trump impersonation really kind of killed my momentum on that, but it's fine.
Nobody has.
They say Hitchcock made the best steaks. The best steaks are clearly Trump steaks.
The best pile of steaks is Trump's.
Yeah. So
you should bring on that dude that does the Trump impersonation, so we can just get it all out of our system in one episode.
He just got signed by SNL. He works for SNL now.
Oh, really?
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Good for that.
So I guess talking about the second half, which I find way less fascinating than the first half of this movie. I don't know. Any thoughts on that specifically? I do think that it's fascinating to have the private detective character who obviously is a staple of noir movies, a staple of
He's
like
a dick, see, private dick.
Yeah. He's a bedroom dick, as they said in Kiss Me Deadly. Call back to episode 1. Anyway, no, but so I do think it's fascinating to have that guy get killed off really fast.
No, he was also since this is a proto slasher film, he wasn't a likable character. I mean, he was he was very irritating to Janet Leigh's sister, and
rude.
Yeah, he just wasn't very likable of a character. So
nobody trusts him. No, nobody, which is an interest, which is a staple of like noir filmmaking, but like nobody trusts the private detective.
Yeah.
In this case, by the time they start to trust him, he's dead.
But like whenever you do something bad, you get killed in a slasher film, and the two bodies that get dropped in the movie are both people who are not perfect. So they're not as obvious as like say a slasher film would later become. It's like to the point where Final Girls is making fun of, but you can see the seeds of it getting planted in this by having the two least likable characters. And you spent a lot of time with Janet Leigh's character, and she was like this big movie star. She was like the Drew Barrymore of the time, and this was her scream.
And I mean, you can see why. She's beautiful and like a great actress, you know what I mean, like really draws you in with the way her performance, you know what I mean,
and the thing is, it's like
that charisma.
Part of the reason why we don't like the talk about the second half is because the woman who played her sister and the himbo that she was sleeping with at the beginning, they're not interesting characters. They're he's pretty to look at and whatnot, but and
he's there to serve a purpose of establishing the scene.
You don't find out very much about them. You find out he's divorced, and you find out she's the sister. You don't.
Yeah, I mean, even that big scene he has at the beginning, it's like it's all exposition. It doesn't really go anywhere. It's and he's they're both very underdeveloped characters, but the ones who get killed in the film are a little more fleshed out. I mean, the detective is not as well fleshed out as Janet Leigh's character, but you because he hits those tropes, we know who he is.
Yeah, and it also kind of just genre wise, you know what I mean, killing off the private detective shows you this isn't the 1940s, this isn't the 1950s, this isn't the movie that the private detective somehow saves the day. This is a movie where the private detective shows up, walks into the house, and gets slashed. That's the extent. And I do think that it's a really amazing scene when he's falling down the stairs when he first gets slashed, and then you see him go like this in the background moving behind him. I the fact that he isn't as fleshed out, I think, is on purpose, and it's he kind of shows up as this genre representing character in some ways to show you this, almost I don't think that Hitchcock's necessarily thinking in these terms, but I do think Hitchcock is thinking in terms of genres and in terms of past filmmaking. And he's showing you that the era of this private detective that shows up, this gruff guy that's just I'm here to I'm going to make sure that everything comes out correctly, which, for the last 20 years has kind of been the mantra of these movies. The guy shows up and is don't worry, I'm here to protect you. I'll show it. I'm the braver one. I'll go talk to the mother. I'll confront her. Kind of has this whole back and forth with Norman Bates, which is a pretty amazing back and forth, I think. Norman Bates is both somehow charming, but also suspicious. But you know what I mean? Throwing out all of these red flags, he finally goes to talk to the mother and instantly gets slashed and falls down the stairs. And you realize this character is not our savior. This character is not trusted by anybody. He's just kind of a dick in both senses of the word.
He's not in the Philip Marlowe way, literally. Yeah.
You just kind of a dick to get pushed down the stairs.
Well, do you think so? It's very easy to ascribe greater meaning to things ipso facto, but do you think that was almost Hitchcock's commentary on that era of filmmaking and that type of predictive character?
I mean, I don't necessarily.
Why have him be a detective instead of just some dude? Well, I guess he wouldn't.
Yeah, no, I think that probably that plays into it, and I do think that the idea that this is this is almost like a new era. Hitchcock is because he's clearly thinking about it in that clip we watched, where he's this is my attempt to create a horror film. So he's clearly thinking in these genre terms and quickly shutting the book on this specific genre.
Yeah, because you expect like, oh, here comes the gumshoe, and he's gonna solve the case and save the day.
Yeah.
Like, no, he gets got pretty.
He's gone.
Like it's cut and dry. That guy's done.
This is the era of the himbo. Let's get it. No.
I like private dicks that don't get got. Why do I keep doing that? I should stop doing that. I really should. Anyway. Can I, Forrest? Are you okay with me trying that the thing I was talking about?
For sure. But I can't stop thinking now about Trump going, "Whatever happened to Sunset Boulevard? Whatever happened to?" No, let's do it. I wish you sent them ahead of time. I could have had them on screen.
I wish I would have thought of it ahead of time, but there you go. We're not.
You have it on your computer or your? You have it
on your
computer or your phone. So you can go down to the share. Do you see?
Oh, sure.
You see an option that says share down at the bottom of the screen.
Video file or share screen. Okay, let me.
If you share your screen, it should give you an option to pull up the letterbox.
Okay, fantastic. So, well, I'm gonna do it off of the file for. We'll do it fancy style before, but I'll do I think I have a way I can do this. Boy, this is.
Well, if we have a few minutes here while you're setting everything up, why don't I just really quickly talk the one thing we haven't mentioned, because y'all aren't really care about the visuals, but the brilliant Saul Bass was able to do the title sequence, and he is like an absolute influence on me, like major hardcore, loved it. So I thought that was absolutely spectacular. So shout out to Saul Bass for those beautiful title credits and whatever else you got.
They're fantastic.
No. I mean, like from jump, this movie is just beautiful from top to bottom. That should give you enough time. You got your tech set up now?
I do. Apparently, I've got my permissions locked down so freaking hard that it's going to be interesting to see if I can even do this. Let's see. Okay. So I'm doing the file. Here we go. All right. So here we go. Are we seeing the empty screen here?
I'm not seeing an empty screen yet.
Okay. Well. This may be something I just have to read off. Again, I should have thought of this before.
Unfortunately, I'm not one of the people who can control this, like I am on Ben's show. So if Ben was off camera doing something,
right.
Oh, there he is. He can.
I just ran the bathroom really.
No, that's fine. I think I have my stuff locked down. I think. Okay, here we go. So I got it. So these are so Letterbox is a place for film. It's a place for this show and for many things. These are some of my favorite reviews that are known as the one-liner reviews. People are like, they're working on their jokes, right? So first one of my favorites here. I watched this with my mother. Maria. Okay. All right. First one. Second one.
Solid.
Good stuff. Maybe the psycho is me for thinking Norman Bates is hot. That's Sophie. So.
I saw some pictures of what's his name, and it was weird because he looked a lot like Harrison Ford, and the pictures was like he was a Western he did.
Interesting. All right.
So I'm like, okay, I can see that. I'm not going to be mad.
No, Anthony Perkins kind of had a very like a more dynamic film career, and then chose this and kind of got typecasted after it, which is an interesting.
Which is the opposite of Andy Griffith, who managed to be in an incredible kind of Donald Trump before Donald Trump movie, and then he got typecast as Andy Griffith, the Andy Griffith Show. Everybody's buddy.
Shucks! Oh man! It's me and Andy Griffith.
So on that, if someone offers you milk with dinner, like that's an acceptable beverage, you can automatically assume they're mentally ill. Savage.
It's funny because my review for I was gonna say I had milk for no my review for this was a one-line review too.
Yeah, it's about the toilet, but you started off with that, so I'm not going to do that one. So Well, and of course, Face in the Crowd is the movie I'm talking about, where he's a psycho proto-Trump. If anyone hasn't seen that, it's brilliant.
It is a
next
good movie.
one. Favorite tool about Norman Bates: the guy cleaned a bathroom like nobody's business. And then this is my favorite review from Letterboxd. Place for Film, Movie Night Extravaganza is on Letterboxd. J. Andrew World's on Letterboxd. Conan Neutron on Letterboxd. Number one with a bullet. This is my internet friend Alexa. The only psycho thing about this movie was the way she got in the shower before letting the water warm up. There you
And
go.
small text too. There we go. So nobody could read it.
That's the real reason she never took a shower again.
Exactly.
She had a
The
bad
text was too
experience.
small.
See, that's right after the clip you played. It's like the next minute. They end up cutting that off for time. But anyway, so that's Letterboxd, the place for film. If you're on Letterboxd, you should be following Movie Night Extravaganza. Clearly, Forrest had the review about the toilet. You know, we already covered that.
All right. Well, I'm gonna go to final thoughts right here before we play Conan's new music video, "A Litany of Grievances," which is also what I call his Hans Zimmer rant. But anyway,
Fair.
So is this a Festivus song?
Yeah, it's a fancy way of saying you have a series of complaints, right? You have a litany of grievances.
Oh, I thought that was the original name for Tucker Carlson Tonight.
Yeah, I was gonna say most right-wing hosts, it's just very much a long series of complaints anyway, right?
Oops, sorry, it's playing on its own.
That's right. That's how we get those views, baby. Autoplay. Christ, I'm on a work meeting.
So I'm gonna go first to Andy. Final thoughts about Psycho, and of course, this is our first of the Murder Night Extravaganza
Murder Night
movie. So if you want to put it in terms, and I'll go. I mean, usually I kind of cut it off before I go last, but I'll go last this time and try to put it in some context for this too. But if you want to put it in some kind of context that places it in the realm of what we're going to do for this month, that would be interesting.
All right.
Oh yeah, because there's a whole month of these.
Yeah. I gotta say like this really is an important film, not just because of the end of the Hays Code, but because of the way it was shot. And I remember the first time I watched it, I was actually turned off by the production looking like it was a 1960s TV show. That opening camera pan of Phoenix was just like an episode of Dragnet or something like that. But if you can get past that, it slowly builds into a beautifully shot black and white film. And it does start off with those great Saul Bass title sequences, which some of my favorites right there. But it really did lay the groundwork for a lot of films that came later, and not just the slasher, because you can also point to police procedurals with that ending, and we could probably come up with 5 or 6 other genres just off the top of our heads. But whatever.
And of course, genres it was kind of killing off. I mean, I think you can come up with multiple kind of
because I mean, it was kind of him stepping away from suspense, and Birds came later, which was also very
Birds was his next. If I'm not mistaken, Birds was his next. Either Birds or Marnie. I can't. No, I think it was Birds and then Marnie, and then it was his last two, Frenzy and Family Plot.
Yeah. Which I haven't seen in a while, but so I can't really necessarily place those. But he's basically ending the suspense genre and introducing us to what became the horror genre, but elevating it in a way that it wasn't elevated before. And the thing is horror was always just a series of subgenres, and you kind of get this through here, where it is just again, a litany of various subgenres kind of put together in a very unique way. Which is another almost meta way of storytelling, much like Hollywood Boulevard is. So you have the
Sunset Boulevard. Sunset Boulevard, folks.
Sunset, yes. And also while you're at it, there's a great album, Sunset on Sunset by FU with a J. Andrew World cover. Sorry. Sorry, the plugs are later. We're not plugging that.
You built up so much goodwill and you just expended it all on that.
I know. It's so sad. But Trump would promote himself, so why not?
So sad.
I went full Trump there.
So sad. Promising career.
Sad exclamation.
Yeah, so this is my last show apparently after that. And, so thank everybody for watching. This is a great end cap as this killed a lot of genres and other genres rose up where it stood. And so, Conan and like his namesake will decapitate you and rise up and become the Snake Kingdom king. And there we go. I have lost the thread there.
Well, no, I think another genre that it really kind of starts off or I think that these movies about someone who's psychologically disturbed, they don't necessarily have to be a killer, but like it's almost like a psychological profile of Norman Bates. And I think there's a lot of movies after this and a lot of TV shows after this that kind of focus on the psychological impact of stuff on people, the psychological trauma that they've gone through. And like kind of act in a similar way to like a police procedural. Like we get fascinated by these serial killers. And I think this movie really, for years, I mean, even as far back as the 1800s with Jack the Ripper, like this kind of tabloidization, like long before a lot of other things, not to go full Trump with it, but like long before a lot of other things were kind of put into like tabloids in a different way. Like, our fixation with this like sensationalized story of a serial killer or of a psychotic person or these profiles kind of have always inspired the worst in us. I think this movie capitalizes on that too. After this, a lot of do too.
Ripped from the headlines, I believe is the phrase.
Yeah. So Conan, final thoughts on this?
Well, first thought, Andrew, I know you mentioned how it was shot. He specifically used his TV crew rather than using his movie crew. And he did that because he wanted to have a completely different feel and to have it look more quote unquote realistic. So remember, this is in the era of 35 millimeter film versus television. Oh, it looks so real, you can practically touch it. And it's like, yeah, but does it though? You can kind of see that it's like a cardboard tree. I mean, like whatever, they weren't really, but
and
anyway,
it's fucking black and white.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not that real. It's in black and white, bro. But at the time, like that was an aesthetic choice he made to give that film a different feel, and it worked. And it worked in such a way that it's not only jarring with like the false build and like the red herrings, and the fact that there's a scene that just gets embodied in people's brains the second they see it because it's so jarring, so messed up. But just how it looks and how it looks like, for lack of a better term, especially then, I'm sure, like something that could happen. Like that's a big deal. And those are all aesthetic choices in the same way that, and I never thought about it before doing the show here of like, does the private detective get killed because like, yo, fuck private detective movies, like maybe, yeah. I don't know. That's a very Hitchcock thing to do. Right.
Or, at the very least that this genre is kind of been beaten to death at this point. And it definitely has.
Because he just thought it was, he thought rightly so that like a lot of those types of films were just getting really hacky and like predictable. And he wanted to do something that was so unpredictable that, again, as we adequately talked about, the unpredictability of it, was sort of like baked in. You have to see this from beginning to end. Here's all these things we will do to entice you to, like, we will like build this up so much that like it's going to be, that will be a thing that you talk about. I mean, that's from like the great, like almost P.T. Barnum school to a certain degree. But like, look at like at the times, again, as we've established, there was nothing like this at the time. And the fact that like it wouldn't stick in collective unconsciousness the way it does if it didn't matter so much, if it wasn't a good movie. And ultimately, my favorite Hitchcock is Vertigo. It's like a, I love Rear Window too. There's whatever. I would put, like, when I'm saying top dollar best, I put Psycho maybe as my third favorite. But it's a great film, like objectively great, I feel. And like important in a way that I could see where people would be like, oh, maybe it's underrated or overrated because blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, it's either rated exactly right or potentially a little underrated because of everything that came after. And I say that as like, I'm not a big fan of the criminal procedural ending of like, well, see, the thing about him is he has psychosis, the blah. Yeah, I don't give a shit. But like they managed to work
problematic Hitchcock using transvestite the wrong way. Not listing Norman Bates pronouns.
Well, and then there's like the whole thing. Okay, I'm gonna throw some out there where the fly lands on him, and he like specifically doesn't acknowledge it to make himself seem crazier.
And that's how Cronenberg was born.
Fantastic. So yeah, great film. If anything, like I said, I got a whole bunch of new stuff out of it, not the least of which is like, holy shit, like that cop is that's some scary shit. But not in the same way that like I think I probably told the story right of the original King Kong when they were crossing the drawbridge to get to the place, and then like King Kong like shakes the drawbridge and all the people fall down, and then these gigantic insects come over and devour everybody. Well, apparently they had to cut that scene out because people were like, yeah, man, the ape was scary as hell, but God, those insects. Gee, that was really frightening. And then people were like, fuck the insects. Like, we made the giant ape movie. Like, so they ended up cutting that film out because it was like distracting. So now I'm not saying that like the cop is like that level of distracting. Like, well, that's a maniac cop in training over there or anything. But just I like that, like the low-key dread of the false stakes, Trump or otherwise, over here, and the real stakes over here, Trump or otherwise.
And those pincers he had whenever he took the license was just like out of left field.
No, I agree with both of those last takes. I think it's interesting that this movie birthed so much after it. I do at some point want to talk about and I don't know when this would be an appropriate time to talk about it, but maybe towards the end, like maybe at the end of the month, like the tabloidization of serial killer stories. That is the thing that kind of, more than anything else, I think, births the slasher genre, right? Like we are interested in these kinds of stories from a time long before film comes around, long before television comes around, long before even like, pulp novels maybe come around. Like we're interested in these things at a time when kind of the stories in the newspapers are hyper sensationalized, but like in a way that like other things maybe aren't. And, the constant like Jack the Ripper, like they can't solve that story. Like for years they had copycat Jack the Rippers. They had other stories about Jack the Ripper. Like that really is the first real slasher story that takes place, right? The same year that Psycho comes out, Peeping Tom comes out, and I started to watch it. I didn't get through the whole thing today, but like it's this idea that like, okay, people like seeing that in newspapers. People follow those stories intrinsically. On screen, like they're going to follow those stories too. And it's kind of amazing to watch this genre unfold. Now, of course, as tabloids get more and more sensational to an insane level, like so do the stories. By the 70s and 80s, when really, tabloid sensationalism is at its height, these movies obviously become more campy than they've ever been before. But it's fascinating to see from the beginning, this idea kind of be expressed this way. I also think that talking about, the way that they kind of did the promotion for it, Jaws, I think, was promoted in somewhat of a similar way. Like these big movies, like movies as an event. You're going to see an event. You're not just going to see a film. It's not just 90 minutes of your life that, you're sitting in the theater. All of a sudden, it's like almost like a theme park ride. Like you're going to see something that's going to stick with you. This is a memory that you're going to have forever. And the idea of from the minute you pull up to the theater, watch the movie, and then leave the theater, it's an experience. And I think that that's something that Hitchcock is predicting. That's, I'm sure that it's been around before that, like the smellorama thing. I mean, I think that in the 1950s, they had some of that kind of stuff. But like, the idea of it as an immersive experience rather than just being a 90-minute, like you go to the theater, you watch it. Maybe you stick around the theater and watch something else. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's now kind of fully immersive in that way. And that shark was definitely a serial killer. But in a similar way though, that's a story that's ripped from the headlines. Like, you know what I mean? Like
yeah,
the idea
it was in New Jersey. There was a killer shark that was running around.
No, I know, that's what I'm saying. Like it's a story that's literally ripped from the headlines. And in another similar way, when Hitchcock makes The Birds, he kind of predicts that. Like The Birds is really the first of those animal attack movies. Like, you know what I mean? So Hitchcock kind of makes these back-to-back horror choices that kind of birth in both cases these fucking genres that number one, are not. It's not fantasy at this point. You know what I mean? Like not necessarily saying that like, oh well, there was a real Norman Bates, but like, you know, these things are ideas that have fascinated us for a very long time. That he's kind of transforming into a horror subgenre that hasn't existed before. And so I think that this is a perfect movie to start this this Murder Night Extravaganza thing on. Anyway,
Night Extravaganza.
Wait, really fast, just to just to play our Murder Night Extravaganza intro again, really fast. I made that. That was me.
You're on the synthesizer doing the MIDI arrangement?
No, I got that from I think Free Domain Music or whatever the website.
It works. It works.
Yeah.
So, I might make fun of it, but I love it.
I looked up the documentary about the actual murders that inspired Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and I took a lot of those quick things from the actual the actual like documentary that that had, you know, the small footage of that guy. But
it's
anyway,
the same killer that inspired this movie.
Yeah. So do you guys? Yeah, Ed Gein.
Which I think that's the house you're living in right now.
Is it Gein? I thought it was Gein.
I thought it might be Gein. I don't know how to pronounce anything. So
I mean,
let's begin the Ed Gein.
Want to know something fucking insane? Actually,
what?
So the basement that I'm in right now at my house,
Amityville Horror.
I guess in the 70s, a cop took his children and tied them to chairs in the basement of the house that I live in, like the house that my parents bought. Like they found out from neighbors. He didn't kill them or anything, but like he like this guy kidnapped his 2 daughters or something. And the basement that I'm in right now is the basement that he did that in.
Whoa! The week.
Whoa! They took his daughter.
I got it for you. The week my sister got married. She got married on Staten Island, and my brother-in-law. I was basically spending
Staten Island. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I was driving him around, getting him, making sure he got everything done before the wedding, and because they only had one car, so I came down early, whatever. So he's just like, he's talking to his brother, and he's just like, "Hey, yo, you know the candy store we used to go to as kids? Apparently, the mob used to take people in the back room and beat them while we buy candy. Can you believe that?"
Nice.
They say yes. It's Staten Island.
I do believe that. Yes.
Yeah. You also believe that 95% of the people that lived on the island were firefighters, and the other and cops at the same time.
Oh, and the tailor that we went to also worked for the mob, and he was always telling stories about the guy from Goodfellas and Donnie Brasco and like, you know, all these, you know, all these famous mobsters that he knew when he first immigrated to the States. He's just like, I don't want to do the business, but I need to work. You know, this is like this nice little Italian guy.
My mom went to, I can't remember if it was middle school or high school, but she went with the one of the like bosses of the Gambino family, because her family was, you know, had a little bit of money and they lived in Long Island. So like, I guess the guy would come in with like a bunch of goons and like sit down and like watch their school plays.
Well, no, he used to watch. He used to, you know, run errands, and the guy. He was handed a bag, and he's like, I'm not doing anything illegal, am I? I don't want to get arrested. And then the mobster just looks at him and goes, "Don't open the bag. You'll never know if it's illegal or not."
One of my favorite things about The Sopranos has always been that I've always just loved that they show like Tony Soprano just doing normal shit. You know what I mean? Like his family life and stuff, because like, you know, no other like
in the pool, that happens to everybody.
But no, like the fact that they show his like normal family shit, and they show AJ fucking up, and they show like Meadow, you know, like going to college and doing well, and like it's all these like little storylines that, like, you know, no other show would really show those storylines to that extent. Like no other show would show, like, you know, like them at like a PTA meeting, and then he like leaves, and then he goes and does like, you know. So I've always just thought that was fucking
does crime. Yeah,
it was amazing. All right, so we're gonna do plugs. Of course, the biggest plug is that tomorrow, This Is Revolution. you know, Conan and I are going to be on talking about The Player, Robert Altman
People have
movie.
spoken. Movies now more than ever.
Movie Night Extravaganza now more than ever. You know, I have to watch it again tomorrow before we do it because I don't know. I have to watch things like 3 times to really, you know, that movie is just so full of like
it's laden with like references and like, you know, again, as we've established, Leo, those moments.
References now more than ever. But Conan, you got anything you want to plug? Of course, you know, we're gonna play your music video, so
yeah.
But
I mean, just a whole bunch of new Protonic Reversals coming up. If you're interested in the music stuff, it's one of the better music interview shows, I am told. So subscribe to it in your normal podcast places, also on YouTube, which I never ever mentioned, and maybe we should have some clips, hint, for the show as well. It's on the things that are not Bandcamp. The Caterwaul Society version of Fight Math is up. So if you want to listen to things for free and make sure you don't see a cent from it, listen to it on Spotify.
But you know what was my first name for the show?
Was Clips. It really?
Clips, now more than ever.
Clips, now more than ever.
Because I over-rely on clips sometimes.
Yeah. But a bunch of stuff just happened, but yeah, the video for A Litany of Grievances off the Protons and Electrons single series is up, which I think we're gonna watch now. Which is if you like videos, and one would assume if you are watching and not listening to this, you might like videos, then you might like this, and if you don't, at least it's short.
All right, Andy, quickly before we do this and then sign off.
Conan Neutron, The Secret Friends is the name of the band. Whoops, sorry, my bad.
It's okay. That's fine. That's fine.
I actually have your website in the description and like info to, you know, that would lead people to find you in the description. But now we're doing these types of shows instead of doing panels, which I think works better format wise because I don't think people really want to go read like 5 people's information deep. Like,
yeah. Pull out the one thing you want. Yeah. No. So I got book covers coming out. I have album covers out. They're all over the place. So coming out in December, which I know pre-order will be soon for Ben Burgess's book
the Dwight Schrute book. just kidding.
False. The Dwight Schrute story.
Someone had a meme like parroting Ben that was like a picture, like it was making fun of Andy's style of drawing, and then it was like Dwight Schrute, what he got right, what he got wrong.
But yeah, no, Christopher Hitchens coming out real soon. Should be able to pre-order it soon. Out now. Last time I heard, which is a while ago, there were still a few CD copies left if you wanted to get them from FU. So check out Sunset on Sunset, great little EP, love letter to LA hip hop. Really, really just a fantastic album. Great little EP. And I'm trying to think what's available that I've done, because I've got like so much stuff. Oh, Darude, Shadow of the People. There's like a week left on that campaign. You can order one of I did one of the bonus covers, so check that out. They were, if they successfully financed it. I know there's some supposed to be some cool stretch goals. I haven't really dug in to see what they are, but if they're not on the website, they should be popping up real soon, because like I said, they're just about to double what they asked for, which is awesome. So super excited about that.
I got a stretch goals called "Get into this next beer." Oh, let me tell you.
Yeah,
I should say that next week we're going to be doing an episode with Karthik. We're really, I think we're keeping this season of this month season of Movie Night Extravaganza a little bit low key. I mean, there's going to be some fun streams. Like I'm going to do Tropic Thunder with the Left Flank Vets crew, which is going to be fucking amazing.
I love that movie.
But so next week though, we're having Karthik, I think just Karthik, on to talk about the differences between the original Halloween and the remake, and Jamie Lee Curtis. It should be a really interesting
Which
episode.
remake?
The
The zombie
like
one?
the latest remake with Jamie Lee Curtis as like the feminist hero. I think it was 2019.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I'll find it and I'll send it over to you.
Actually, it's a sequel, not a remake, but okay.
Didn't they remake? Well, all right.
No, Rob Zombie did the remake.
Yeah, you're thinking. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't actually give a shit, by the way, but I felt the need to correct you anyway. I'm sorry.
I've seen the original, like the first.
Yeah, the original's the only one you need. There's good stuff in them, but the only one that's essential film was the first one.
Yeah, I don't know. The third one's pretty cool, but that has nothing to do with anything.
But it's a completely different. Whatever.
All right. So you guys are listening to Rock 29.7, and we have a new track for you guys, a new video. Conan Neutron and the Secret Friends out here with their new track, A Litany of Grievances. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, here we go.
That's right. Thank you very much. It starts off quiet because I'm a pretentious asshole.
Transcend these petty vulgarities. If I could transcend the way that they made me, if all the fight but not the victory. If you want grievances, I got a litany. And these petty vulgarities. If I could transcend the way that they made me, if all the fight but not the victory. If you want grievances, I gotta live in me.
Well, all right. Thanks for joining us here on Movie Night Extravaganza. We'll be back next week with Halloween, comparing at least some of them. I don't know, whatever. And tomorrow, of course, Conan and I will be on This Is Revolution. Watch This Is Revolution. You should have been watching it instead of watching this.
Let me tell you a story.
So I don't
Let me tell you a story about you should be watching This Is Revolution, baby.
All right. Well, I'm just going to say left is best.